Welcome, my friends. Let me ask you something. What if I told you that the founder of one of the biggest car companies in the world once worked in muddy rice fields with bare feet? What if I told you he never went to college, had no money, and grew up so poor that even buying a train ticket was impossible? And one day, when he wanted to escape poverty and chase a better life, he didn't take a bus. He didn't take a train. He ran. More than 120 kilometers on foot, with nothing in his pocket except a dream. This is not a movie story. This is not a motivational fantasy. This is a true story. Today, you are going to hear the story of a boy who started with absolutely nothing and later built one of the most powerful companies in the world, Hyundai. His name was Chung Ju-yung. But this story is not just about business or cars. This story is about something much deeper. It's about courage. It's about persistence. It's about what happens when someone refuses to give up, even when life keeps pushing them down again and again. Think about this. How many people stop trying after the first failure? How many people give up when life becomes difficult? But some people are different. Some people fall down and stand up again. They fail and try again. They lose everything and still refuse to quit. And those people are the ones who change their lives. Now, you might be wondering, why are we telling this story on an English learning channel? Because learning English should not feel like studying a boring textbook. You don't become fluent by memorizing endless grammar rules or long vocabulary lists. Real fluency comes from understanding real stories, feeling emotions, and hearing natural English again and again. When you listen to powerful stories, your brain remembers words faster. Your listening becomes stronger. And speaking English starts to feel natural. So while you listen to this story today, you are not just learning English. You are experiencing it. You are hearing clear, natural English that you can understand and repeat. And who knows? Maybe this story will inspire you to work harder, dream bigger, and believe in yourself a little more. All right, take a deep breath, relax, and let's travel back in time to the beginning of this incredible journey. Part 1. The Boy Who Had Nothing. The year is 1915. We are in a small, quiet village in what is now North Korea. At that time, Korea had not yet been divided. Life in this village was extremely difficult. Most people were farmers. They worked long hours under the hot sun, growing rice just to survive. In one small straw roof house lived a poor farming family. They did not have electricity. They did not have machines. And sometimes they didn't even have enough food to eat. It was in this humble home that a baby boy was born. His name was Chung Ju-yung. His parents were simple farmers. From a very young age, Chung Ju-yung helped his family work in the rice fields. His feet stepped into wet mud every day. There were no fancy shoes, no comfortable life, just hard work. Morning after morning, he watched his parents struggle to survive. And slowly, a thought began to grow in his mind. A question that would change his life forever. Is this the only life I will ever have? He looked beyond the mountains surrounding his village and imagined a bigger world, a world full of opportunity. But dreaming was easy. Escaping poverty was not. And very soon, young Chung Ju-yung would make a bold decision that no one expected. A decision that would begin the long journey from a poor farmer's son to the founder of a global company. But that journey would start with running away from home. And the road ahead would be far more difficult than he could ever imagine. When he was born, nobody imagined he would change the future of a country. He was just a poor farmer's son in a small village in Korea. His name was Chung Ju-yung. He was the eldest son in a large family. And in a poor farming family, being the eldest meant one thing: responsibility. There were no toys, no comfortable school days, no time to dream. Every morning before sunrise, young Chung followed his father to the fields. He carried water, cut grass for the cows, and helped plant rice under the hot sun. His father was a strict man who believed in only one rule: work hard, don't dream. To him, life was simple. A farmer's son must become a farmer. But Chung was different. Even as a child, something inside him refused to accept that this small village was his entire world. Sometimes he would stop working and quietly look at the distant mountains. Beyond those mountains was a world he had never seen. And deep inside his heart, a question kept growing. Is this really all there is to life? When he was about 14 years old, Chung had a dream. He wanted to study. He wanted to go to school, learn mathematics, and maybe one day become a teacher. For a poor farmer's son, that dream sounded impossible. But one day, he made a bold decision. Without telling anyone, he secretly left home and walked many miles to enroll in a school. For the first time in his life, he felt hope. But that hope did not last long. His father soon discovered where he was. Angry and disappointed, his father came to the school, grabbed him, and dragged him back to the farm. On the long road home, his father said something that would stay in Chung's mind forever. Stop dreaming. Dreams don't feed hungry mouths. For many people, that moment would have ended the dream. Life had spoken clearly. Stay small. Stay where you belong. But something inside Chung refused to give up. A few years later, he tried again. This time, his dream was even bigger. He wanted to go to the city of Seoul, the place where opportunities lived. But there was one big problem. He had almost no money, not even enough to buy a train ticket. So what did he do? He ran. Yes, he ran nearly 120 kilometers to reach the city. No phone, very little food. Just a young man with a powerful belief that his life could be more than endless rice fields. When he finally arrived in Seoul, reality hit him hard. The city was not easy. He found work at a construction site. Every day he lifted heavy bricks and mixed cement from sunrise to sunset. His hands became rough and sometimes bled. His back ached with pain. Life was still very difficult. But something had changed. He was no longer trapped in the village. Every night before sleeping, he whispered the same promise to himself. One day, I will not just build houses. One day, I will build something much bigger. After months of exhausting work, Chung saved a little money. It wasn't much, but it was enough to try something new. Together with a partner, he opened a tiny rice shop. It was small, simple, and far from perfect. But for Chung, it was his first step into the world of business. For the first time, he wasn't just working for someone else. He was building something of his own. But life had another lesson waiting for him. One day, his business partner disappeared. And with him, all the money. Everything Chung had worked for was suddenly gone. In one moment, He lost it all. Many people in that situation would have given up. They would return to the village and accept their fate. But not Chung. Instead of giving up, he wiped away his tears and said something powerful to himself. Money can be taken, but my fire, my vision cannot. So he started again, from zero. Over the next few years, he worked any job he could find. He carried bricks. He delivered salt. He fixed bicycles. He even cleaned shoes. While others complained about hard work, Chung was quietly learning. He watched how businesses operated. He listened to how customers spoke. He studied how successful people made decisions. He didn't learn from books. He learned from life itself. Slowly, he began to understand something important. Success is not only about money. It is about understanding people, solving problems, and never giving up when life becomes difficult. Finally, in the 1940s, Chung took another brave step. He opened a small construction company. At first, the jobs were simple: repairing roads, fixing broken bridges, small projects that many companies ignored. But Chung treated every project with seriousness and pride. His work was honest. His quality was excellent. Soon, people began to notice. Even the government started trusting his company with bigger projects. And after World War II ended, the country began rebuilding. That moment created an opportunity. And Chung Ju-yung was ready. From a poor farmer's son who once ran 120 kilometers to chase his dream, he would go on to build one of the largest companies in the world, Hyundai. Korea was shattered. The country was divided, exhausted, and struggling to survive. But one man looked at the ruins and saw something different. Where others saw destruction, he imagined highways. Where others saw poverty, he imagined industries. His name was Chung Ju-yung, and this is how he began building one of the most powerful companies in the world. Welcome to Part 2, Building from the Ashes, the Birth of Hyundai. At the end of Part 1, we saw Chung Ju-yung open a small construction business. But to understand how bold that decision was, we must first understand the world he was living in. Korea in the 1940s was not a land of opportunity. For decades, the country had been under Japanese rule. When that occupation finally ended in 1945, Koreans celebrated their freedom. But the truth was much harder. Freedom came with chaos. The economy was destroyed. Infrastructure barely existed. Roads were broken. Cities were damaged. And industries were almost non-existent. Imagine a country trying to stand without a foundation. That was Korea. Many people were simply trying to survive each day. Few were thinking about building businesses or dreaming about the future. But Chung Ju-yung was different. He believed that when a country is broken, it creates the greatest opportunity to rebuild. He believed ordinary people could become the builders of a new nation. So, in 1946, at the age of 31, he officially launched his company. He called it Hyundai. The name means modern in Korean. Think about that for a moment. A man who grew up in a poor farming village, who had very little formal education, who once struggled just to find food, started a company called Modern. That name wasn't just a business label. It was a vision. Chung Ju-yung didn't just want to repair buildings. He wanted to help create a modern Korea. At the beginning, Hyundai was a small construction company. The jobs were simple: repairing roads, fixing buildings, and taking on small construction projects. Nothing glamorous. Nothing famous. But Chung's way of thinking was very different from most business owners. Many small companies avoid big projects because they feel too small. But Chung believed something else. He once said something that perfectly explains his mindset. We are small because we never try to take big opportunities. So he began doing something bold. He started bidding for projects much larger than his company. It was risky. Some people thought he was crazy. But Chung believed that growth only happens when you step into bigger challenges. He also understood something very important. He didn't need to know everything himself. So he hired people who were more skilled than him. Engineers, managers, workers who had technical knowledge. But even though he trusted his team, he never stayed far away from the work. Chung Ju-yung was not the type of businessman who sat comfortably in an office. Instead, he visited construction sites personally. He talked with workers. He examined materials. He checked the quality of the work himself. Every stone, every brick, every structure. Because he believed something very simple. If you build something, it must be strong enough to carry the future. Then, history changed everything. In 1950, the Korean War began. North Korea invaded the South. The country was once again thrown into chaos. Cities burned. Families were separated. Millions of people suffered. For many companies, the war meant disaster. Businesses collapsed, factories closed, and economic activity stopped almost completely. But once again, Chung Ju-yung saw something others didn't. He saw the future. He understood one powerful truth. After destruction always comes rebuilding. So instead of shutting down Hyundai, he prepared for what would come next. He believed that once the war ended, Korea would need new roads, bridges, buildings, and infrastructure. And he wanted Hyundai to be ready to build them. Soon, he began working with the South Korean government on reconstruction projects. Hyundai started helping rebuild essential infrastructure across the country. For the workers, this was more than just construction. They were rebuilding their homeland. Every road they paved connected cities again. Every building they repaired helped communities return to life. And because Hyundai kept working even during the most difficult times, people began to trust the company. The name Hyundai started to represent strength, reliability, and determination. While many others stopped moving, Hyundai kept moving forward. And that reputation would soon open the door to one of the most important moments in Chung Ju-yung's life. In the 1960s, the South Korean government gave him a challenge that seemed almost impossible. A project so large that many companies refused to even try. But Chung Ju-yung didn't run away from impossible challenges. He had built his entire life by running toward them. And this next challenge would change not only Hyundai's future, but the future of Korea itself. One day, the South Korean government came with a bold request. We need a bridge across the Han River. Can you build it? At that moment, many people were shocked by the answer. Because the company they asked, Hyundai, had never built a bridge before. Not even once. Other construction companies laughed. Critics shook their heads. They said, he doesn't even have an engineering degree. He's not a bridge expert. He's just a construction businessman. But the founder of Hyundai, Chung Ju-yung, thought differently. Instead of saying, we can't, he asked a simple but powerful question. What if we try? Chung believed something important. If you keep saying something is impossible, you will never learn how to do it. So he accepted the challenge. He gathered the best team he could find. He hired experienced engineers. He studied bridge designs day and night. He even traveled to see famous bridges around the world to understand how they were built. Then the real work began. Every day, Chung stood beside the Han River, watching the construction closely. He studied every detail. He asked questions. He corrected mistakes. He pushed the team forward. This wasn't just another construction project. It was a test of belief. And then something incredible happened. In only 4 months, the bridge across the Han River was completed. The same people who laughed at him before were now silent. Because a poor farmer's son had just built one of South Korea's most important bridges. But the bridge meant more than concrete and steel. It became a symbol, a message to the world. South Korea was rising, and Hyundai was helping build that future. After the bridge was completed, Hyundai's reputation grew rapidly. The government began trusting Chung more and more. Soon, Hyundai was given even bigger projects, highways, dams, ports, and large infrastructure across the country. But even with all this success, Chung Ju-yung was not satisfied. Deep inside, he never forgot his childhood. He remembered being a poor boy who had once walked barefoot because his family couldn't afford shoes. Money was not enough for him. He wanted transformation. He wanted to build something that could change the future of his country. Chung once said something that defined his philosophy. We cannot simply copy what other countries do. We must create our own path. Then he made a decision that shocked everyone again. Hyundai would start building ships. People laughed once more. South Korea had almost no experience in shipbuilding at that time. Many critics said, "This is impossible. Korea doesn't have the technology. There are no shipyards. There is no industry." But Chung remained calm. He simply replied, "Then we will learn." He began meeting with shipbuilding experts in Britain. He studied how shipyards operated. He looked for land where Hyundai could build something completely new. Eventually, he found it. A quiet fishing village called Ulsan. To many people, it looked like nothing more than mud, water, and small boats. But Chung looked at it differently. He said, "This place will become the center of Korea's industrial future." Many people thought he had gone crazy. But once again, Chung proved them wrong. By 1974, Hyundai launched its first large ship and quickly became one of the world's leading shipbuilders. What once started in rice fields had turned into massive factories and global industry. Chung Ju-yung was no longer just building a company. He was building a dream. By the end of the 1970s, Hyundai had already built roads, bridges, ports, factories, and ships. But Chung believed something was still missing. There was one industry South Korea still depended on other countries for: cars. At that time, South Korea imported most of its cars from Japan, the United States, and Europe. So, Chung asked a dangerous question. Why can't Korea build its own cars? No one had a clear answer. So once again, Chung decided to find the answer himself. And that decision would begin the next chapter of Hyundai's story. The chapter where a man who once walked 120 kilometers barefoot would attempt something even bigger: building Korea's first global automobile company. Many people once believed that South Korea could never build a car. They believed the automobile industry belonged only to rich nations with powerful factories, advanced machines, and decades of engineering experience. In their minds, countries like Germany, The United States and Japan were the only ones capable of producing automobiles. South Korea was still developing. The roads were new. The industry was young. The technology simply wasn't there. But one man refused to accept that belief. His name was Chung Ju-yung, the founder of Hyundai Motor Company. While others saw limitations, Chung saw possibility. He once said something powerful to his team. "We have already built the roads. Now we must build the cars that will drive on them." To many people in the room, that idea sounded impossible. Cars? How could they build cars? They didn't have enough engineers. They didn't have advanced factories. They didn't even have the proper tools. But Chung calmly responded with a simple belief. "Then we will learn. We will train our engineers. We will build the tools ourselves." For Chung, building a car was not just a business idea. It was a national mission. He wanted Korea to prove that it could create something powerful with its own hands. And that is where the real story begins. In the early 1970s, Chung understood something important. If Korea wanted to build cars, it needed experience. So he did something bold. He traveled to Britain. There, he met George Turnbull, a respected engineer who had worked at the famous British automaker British Leyland. Turnbull was surprised. Why would a businessman from Korea, a country with no car industry, want to build an automobile company? But when Chung explained his vision, everything changed. He didn't ask for help out of desperation. He spoke with confidence. "I don't want to copy foreign cars," Chung said. "I want to build something new, something Korean." Turnbull was impressed. Soon, he agreed to help. But he didn't come alone. Chung recruited a team of experienced British engineers, experts in engine design, transmissions, vehicle safety, and production systems. When these engineers arrived in Korea, they were shocked. Many roads were still unpaved. Factories were basic. The technology was limited. Some of them quietly wondered, "How can we possibly build a car here?" But Chung gave them something far more powerful than machines. He gave them belief. "You have built cars before," he told them. "But here, you are building history." The team began working in a simple warehouse. No luxury offices. No advanced laboratories. Just determination. The early days were extremely difficult. Parts didn't fit correctly. Engines failed during testing. The car body was too heavy. Some suppliers refused to sell materials. Failure happened again and again. But every time something went wrong, Chung did not become angry. He simply asked one question. What did we learn? He believed something that every entrepreneur must understand. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is the path to success. After years of experiments, long nights, and endless problem solving, the breakthrough finally came. In 1975, Hyundai Pony was introduced. It became Korea's first mass-produced national car. The Pony was not the most beautiful car in the world. It wasn't as luxurious as a Mercedes. It wasn't as fast as a Ferrari. But it represented something much more important. It represented independence. When the car was unveiled in Seoul, the audience fell silent for a moment. Then the crowd erupted. People clapped. Some even cried. For many Koreans, this moment proved something powerful. We can do it too. But building the car was only the beginning. The real challenge was selling it to the world. Global automobile giants like Toyota, Ford Motor Company, General Motors, and Honda didn't take Hyundai seriously. Many people laughed. Korean cars? They said. Those won't last. But Chung had heard this kind of doubt before. When he built bridges, people laughed. When he built ships, people laughed. Now that he was building cars, they laughed again. But Chung ignored the noise. Instead, he focused on three powerful principles: courage, discipline, continuous improvement. Hyundai started small. They first exported cars to developing markets like Ecuador, Egypt, and Chile. Slowly, their reputation began to grow. Then came a bold step. In 1986, Hyundai entered the United States market. They introduced the Hyundai Excel. It wasn't luxurious, but it was affordable, fuel-efficient, and practical. American drivers were curious, and the results shocked the industry. In its very first year, Hyundai sold more than 168,000 cars in the United States, a record for a new car brand. Suddenly, the companies that once laughed were paying attention. But success didn't last forever. As sales increased, problems began to appear. Some cars had mechanical issues. Air conditioners stopped working. Parts broke too quickly. Customers complained. American newspapers started calling Hyundai a low-quality brand. Sales dropped. The company's reputation suffered. Once again, Hyundai faced a serious crisis. Inside the company, many executives panicked. They suggested reducing production. Some even proposed stopping exports. But Chung Ju-yung refused to give up. He said something that would later become one of Hyundai's most important philosophies. If we are not willing to improve, then we do not deserve success. So Hyundai made a bold decision. Instead of running away from the problem, they rebuilt everything. Stricter quality inspections, better materials, more advanced testing. Chung told his team, "Let's not compete only on price. Let's compete on pride." And that decision would eventually transform Hyundai into one of the most respected car manufacturers in the world. Year after year, Hyundai kept improving. At first, they were simply trying to survive, but slowly, something changed. Hyundai didn't just build cars anymore. They began building better cars. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Hyundai had completely transformed itself. Around the world, people started seeing the brand differently. It was no longer known as a cheap alternative. Instead, Hyundai became recognized as reliable, intelligent, and well-engineered. The same company that once struggled to produce even a single tire was now winning international car awards, J.D. Power Quality Awards, and global recognition for design, safety, and innovation. In the United States, something remarkable began to happen. Customers started saying, "Hyundai is not just a good car for the price, it's simply a good car." But as Hyundai rose in the global auto industry, something even more powerful was happening back home in South Korea. People no longer saw Hyundai as just a corporation. They saw it as a symbol of hope. Whenever the country faced a challenge, whenever something seemed too big, too expensive, or too impossible, there was always one man who believed it could be done. That man was Chung Ju-yung. But this stage of his life was no longer about small projects or simple business success. Now it was about something bigger. It was about helping rebuild an entire nation's future, one massive dream at a time. By the early 1990s, South Korea had undergone an incredible transformation. The country had moved from poverty to prosperity, from survival to rapid economic growth. And behind much of that progress was a familiar name: Hyundai. But Hyundai was no longer just an automobile company. It had become an industrial giant. The company was building dams, nuclear power plants, oil refineries, steel mills, industrial complexes, container ships, high-speed rail systems, and massive global highways. They even helped develop South Korea's first satellite launch site. This wasn't a coincidence. It was Chung Ju-yung's vision. He believed that if a nation only copies what others have already built, it will always remain second. But if a nation dares to build the future itself, it can lead the world. And slowly, the Korean people began to believe that too. Hyundai had become more than a company. It had become a national symbol. When Koreans bought a Hyundai car, they weren't just buying transportation. They were buying confidence. They were saying to the world, "Look at us now. We build our own future." As Hyundai expanded across industries, it also became one of the largest employers in South Korea. By the mid-1990s, hundreds of thousands of workers were connected to Hyundai's network in construction, steel production, shipbuilding, design, energy, logistics, and engineering. Every factory Hyundai built created thousands of jobs. Every job supported families, communities, and entire towns. Chung Ju-yung understood this responsibility deeply. He once said, "Every time we build a new factory, we are feeding thousands of homes." Business is not only about profit, it is about people. In many remote regions where jobs once didn't exist, Hyundai opened new plants. Young students graduating with technical degrees suddenly had opportunities. For many families, Hyundai wasn't just a company. It was a doorway to a better life. You might think that after decades of building empires, Chung would finally slow down. But he didn't. Even in his 70s, he continued visiting construction sites and factories across the country. Wearing his signature gray suit and white safety helmet, he walked through hot steel plants, busy ports, and frozen shipyards. He spoke directly with workers. He asked questions. He took notes. He never behaved like a king. Instead, he acted like a foreman. Because deep inside, he still saw himself as that barefoot village boy who once cleaned bricks just to earn a few coins. And his hunger to build never disappeared. In fact, it led him to one of the boldest ideas of his life. In the late 1990s, when Chung Ju-yung was already in his 80s, he shocked the world once again. He announced that he would travel to North Korea. This was extraordinary. North Korea and South Korea had fought a devastating war decades earlier. The border between them remained one of the most dangerous and heavily guarded places on Earth. Most South Korean businessmen would never consider going there. But Chung Ju-yung was not like most men. He believed something simple yet powerful. We are one people. We share the same language. We must rebuild peace. So in 1998, he crossed the border. Not with speeches, not with weapons, but with 500 cows. Yes, 500 cows. When reporters asked why, Chung explained that during the Korean War, North Korea had taken cattle from his family's land. So now, in a time of peace, he was returning them. But this time, he returned them not with anger, but with forgiveness. It wasn't just a political gesture. It was a deeply human one. News channels around the world broadcast the powerful image, trucks filled with cows slowly crossing the demilitarized zone, led by an elderly man in a suit. The moment was emotional, symbolic, unforgettable. And that single act opened a small door between North and South Korea. A door that few others had been able to unlock. And it was Hyundai's founder who held the key. In the final years of his life, Chung gradually stepped back from the daily management of the company. But he never stopped thinking. His diary, written in simple Korean, was filled with pages of ideas, reflections, and future plans. He continued visiting offices, reviewing projects, and studying global markets. But time was catching up. The man who once worked 18 hours a day, the man who once ran more than 120 kilometers barefoot in his youth, now walked slower. His body was weaker, but his mind remained sharp. Knowing his time was limited, he began writing letters to his sons, his company leaders, and even to his country. In those letters, he left one powerful message. Never be satisfied with what you have built. Always ask yourself, what can we build next? In 2001, at the age of 85, Chung Ju-yung passed away peacefully. The boy from a poor village was gone, but the legacy he left behind could never disappear. After his death, South Korea observed a national moment of silence. Television stations paused their broadcasts. News anchors struggled to hold back tears. Even his competitors, people who once criticized him, stood to honor him. Because Chung Ju-yung was never just a businessman. He was something far greater. He was a builder of dreams. A man who showed the world that a college degree isn't a requirement for greatness, that you don't need anyone's permission to create something extraordinary, that you don't have to be rich to build the pride of a nation. He began life with nothing dust under his feet, fire in his chest. He ended it, leaving behind factories, ships, highways, satellites, and the love of millions. Today, the name Hyundai travels across continents in the US, in India, across Europe, and Africa, carried by the vision and determination of one man, Chung Ju-yung. Part 4. The Legacy After the Builder. When Chung Ju-yung passed away in 2001, at the age of 85, South Korea lost more than a businessman. They lost a father figure, a symbol of resilience, a man who had endured war, famine, and countless failures, yet never retreated. His funeral wasn't just attended by CEOs or politicians. It drew workers, farmers, engineers, shopkeepers, mechanics, and everyday people. Some brought flowers, others letters. Many came with nothing but tears. They knew that without him, their country's path could have been very different. The months after his death were tense within the Hyundai empire. His conglomerate had grown massive. Construction, cars, electronics, steel, banking, shipping, the list went on. And now, its leader was gone. Questions swirled. Who would guide Hyundai? Would it survive or splinter into pieces? The truth is, change had already begun. The South Korean government had introduced rules to reduce the dominance of family-run conglomerates, and Hyundai, being one of the largest, was forced to restructure. After Chung's death, his sons and executives made a bold decision. Hyundai would split into multiple companies, each with its own leadership and focus. Painful? Yes. Necessary? Absolutely. Chung Ju-young's dream was never about one man controlling everything. His dream was growth, innovation, and freedom. Hyundai's new chapters included Hyundai Motor Company, cars that carried the pride of South Korea. Hyundai Engineering and Construction, shaping infrastructure worldwide. Hyundai Heavy Industries, building ships and industrial giants. Hyundai Steel, supplying materials that built nations. Hyundai Mobis, car parts innovation. Hyundai Rotem, trains, military equipment, and more. Each company honored Chung not by imitating him, but by embodying his spirit. Of all the companies, Hyundai Motor carried the heaviest emotional weight. It wasn't just a car, it was a symbol of what South Koreans could achieve. And after Chung's death, Hyundai Motors underwent a transformation. The world still remembered the old Hyundai. Affordable, yes, but not impressive. But the company dared to dream bigger. They invested in world-class design, recruited top talent from Germany and the US, pioneered hybrid, electric, and hydrogen technologies, and set new standards in safety and quality. They rebranded Hyundai from cheap to smart and modern. They launched luxury lines like Genesis to compete with Lexus, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz. They even entered Formula One, proving their cars were not just reliable, they were performance machines. By the mid-2010s, Hyundai was no longer the underdog. It became a global giant, selling cars in over 200 countries, standing among the world's top car manufacturers, alongside Kia. And none of it would have been possible without one man's courage. Today, Chung Ju-yung's life is studied worldwide. Business schools analyze his leadership. Books explore how he led through crisis, took impossible risks, trusted effort over talent, and never forgot his roots. Remember, he had no college degree, no investors, no engineering background. He built roads without studying civil engineering, ships without shipbuilding knowledge, cars without being an auto expert. He even visited North Korea, reuniting families without being a politician. Why? Because he believed in human potential. His story is not just business. It is a lesson in vision, grit, sacrifice, and humanity. The lessons he left behind. You don't need permission to dream. Chung didn't wait. He chased trains, knocked on doors, failed, and kept moving forward. His life says, don't wait, start. Failure is not the end, it's preparation. He lost everything more than once, but each loss built the strength to rise again. Chung Ju-yung's life is a reminder that one determined individual can shape the destiny of millions. That fire in your chest, it could move mountains. Absolutely. I can rewrite your script to make it more original, engaging, and motivational, while keeping the inspirational tone and making it your own unique story for YouTube. Here's a polished version. Betrayed, mocked, rejected. Every failure could have stopped him, but instead, it became a stepping stone, a lesson, a tool to build something greater. If you fear failure, you fear growth. And he understood that better than anyone. But success, for him, wasn't just about personal gain. It was about lifting others as he climbed. He didn't just earn money, he created jobs, gave people a reason to stay in their hometowns, supported schools, and helped rebuild communities. Real success isn't measured by how high you climb. It's measured by how many people you lift along the way. The greatest strength isn't wealth, it's character. People trusted him not because he was rich, but because he was honest. He kept his word. He paid his workers. He faced his mistakes head on. Even when Hyundai stumbled in America, he didn't hide. He said, "We can do better. Let's improve." And improve, they did. Today, millions drive Hyundai cars without ever knowing the story behind them. They press the accelerator, enjoy the music, and look out the window, unaware that every car represents the relentless spirit of one boy who refused to accept limits. Some of us, however, remember. We remember a boy born in a poor North Korean village, told not to dream, who couldn't even afford a train ticket, running barefoot across mountains in pursuit of a future no one else could imagine. We remember how he fell, got back up, fell again, and kept building roads, ships, cars, dreams. He didn't just transform a company. He changed what people believed was possible. What is the real legacy of Chung Ju-yung? It isn't only Hyundai. It isn't the factories, the bridges, or the awards. His true legacy is this. Even if you start with nothing, if you keep moving forward, keep building, one day the world will run on your roads, sail in your ships, and believe in your vision. This is the story of the boy who built Hyundai, and it's a story that must never be forgotten. Let this video be more than just a story. Let it be a message. Fight for your dream. Rise after every setback. And when the world says you can't remember Chung Ju-yung, and ask yourself his famous question, have you tried? Before we close, let's see what Hyundai is today. From a boy with no shoes and no money for a train ticket to a company worth over $50 billion, Hyundai's cars run in more than 200 countries. Their factories employ over 250,000 people. They build some of the world's most advanced ships, from massive container vessels to high-tech oil tankers. And their luxury car brand, Genesis, now competes with Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Lexus, winning international awards. All of this started with a boy who refused to give up. This isn't just a story about a man. It's a story about what's possible. So if life feels tough, if you feel small, poor, or overlooked, if people tell you you're not strong, smart, or ready enough, remember this story. Remember this name, Chung Ju-yung. If he could do it, so can you. And if you want more stories that inspire, teach English, and help you believe in yourself again, hit that subscribe button. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we give you the courage to write your own.